Yo, what is up?
What's up, everyone?
This is the Buckeye Lounge, our very first episode. I'm Sean Schrock, co-host of TG. And guys, we just first of all we want to start out by thanking Eric Boggs, Chris Wilds, Sarah Boggs, Dr. Corey for having us on this channel, giving us our own space. Also, got to give a shout out to Mello and Devin of the Buckeye Boys for giving us our start and letting us, bringing us on and giving us a chance to see if we like this, see if we could actually do it. And things are, it's never goodbye with us. We're always going to go. I'm always going to be a Buckeye boy. TG's always going to be part of the Buckeye boy family, and we're still going to go over there and help them out from time to time. But we're over here now on the Ohio podcast, and we're happy to be here. And we have a great show lined up for you today.
Yep. Everyone, please welcome the man, the myth, the legend, NFL star, freaking Buckeye legend and national champion, Tim Anderson. Tim, how you doing, my man?
Do we really want to start out the show with lies? Is that really the best idea? NFL star, legend, myth? I mean, I think.
Basically, you were a star.
I think
basically, you sell
yourself a little misleading.
You sell yourself too short. You were really good in the NFL.
I probably do.
Hey, I go okay. Back because Tim.
If I was really good, I'd have played more than 4 years.
And the fact that you made it there, I mean, anybody that makes it to the NFL, I don't care if you play 1 year, you play 2 plays, the fact that you get to compete against the greatest, and the best of the best, man. I mean, you're one of the few that can say that. I mean, there's not many people that can say that, man. And you hung around for a few years and played at a high level, man. So, I mean, give yourself a pat on the back.
And it was awesome. I got to play against some legends of the game. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre. I mean, playing against those guys was kind of surreal when you kind of watch them growing up and through college and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty cool.
What's cool is I actually followed Tim's career when he was in high school because I think we grew up about 30 minutes away from each other, and Tim's school was a smaller school, but they always had a powerhouse team. I mean, there's a few of you that made it, that went to D1 schools, and you were the one that went, to the biggest one of them all. But you guys had a good run there at Clyde.
Yeah, in the mid '90s, they were real good. They a few years before I got into high school, they were like 10-0 1 year, didn't make the playoffs. Which, if you live in Ohio and I say you go 10-0 and don't make the high school playoffs, you'll probably think I'm absolutely crazy, considering like teams that go like 4-6 now make the playoffs. But they did not make the playoffs, and then I think they were state runners up and state champs the next year. But unfortunately, all that was before I got to high school.
I mean, people forget though. Back then, I mean, it was a lot tougher to get in the playoffs. So was it? They expanded it. I think maybe a couple years after I got out of high school. Were you still when they expanded it?
Yeah, I want to say it was like maybe only 2 or 4 teams got in. Like the playoffs were much smaller, and now it's, I want to say like 16 or something. It's kind of crazy from each region. I mean,
yeah,
yep,
yeah. It's changed quite a bit in Ohio how they do that now.
Now, Tim, last time we got to talk to you, it was on the Buckeye Boys, and it was you and Donnie came on, you and Donnie Nicky, and you guys got to tell us what it was like, before the national championship. When you look back on how this year's team did, we didn't really get a chance to talk to you after they won it. What was it like watching their playoff run?
It was impressive. I mean, it really was. The way that they essentially dominated every game in the playoffs for the most part. I know a couple of the games were close, but especially the way they kind of played there towards the end of the regular season and the way they came through the playoffs, Tennessee and, Oregon. It was really, really impressive. Just they put the whole thing together: special teams, offense, defense. That team really came together after that Michigan game, And, you never want to lose a game, obviously, especially to your rivals. Um, but for those old folks out there, to quote a great movie, sometimes when you win, you really lose. And sometimes when you lose, you really win. Props to anybody that knows what movie that came from. And, but, I think that loss really, really helped that team come together. And without that loss, I kind of wonder if they would have played like that in the playoffs and, would they have made that run over that stretch if they would have beat Michigan the way they were expected to and kind of blown them out. So it was impressive. The way they bounced back, the way they played, knocking those teams off and getting all the way and winning it all. It was impressive.
Now, I wanted to. There's one thing I wanted to ask you about because you guys went through this because you won your national championship as a junior. You guys
Yes.
weren't favored to win it, at the beginning of the year. But how did it go from? I mean, how did your guys' mentality change from after being like the hunter going after the big dogs to being the big dog the next year? I mean, was there a lot? I mean, the pressure had to be tenfold.
It was. It was kind of nice being the underdog the entire year because we were never. Certainly, we were going. The preseason that year, I don't even know what we were. We weren't even picked to win the Big Ten. I think we were kind of expected to be like kind of maybe third, fourth in the Big Ten. I think going into the season, we were ranked somewhere in the teens, if I remember right, something like that. So we were always kind of the underdog, which I think really helped us. And then obviously once we won everything and, we had a lot of guys back. I mean, the most of that team, most of the starters on that championship team were either juniors or sophomores.
Mm-hmm.
We did have obviously some seniors, Donnie Mickey and Mike Doss and Matt Wilhelm and stuff. But a ton of our players were all kind of underclassmen. So obviously the expectation the next year was super high. And I think it maybe got to us a little. I mean, it's hard when you're expected to win every week, especially in college, because, I mean, you are still kids. I mean, you're 19, 20-year-old kids, and it's hard to be perfect. And we were perfect the year before. We started out the year obviously perfect, and unfortunately got knocked off by Wisconsin in a close game up in Madison. But yeah, it was the pressure. Senior year versus junior year was significantly different.
Okay. How impressed were you with Ryan Day with how he was able to respond the way he did and lead this team the way he did?
It's a testament to who that guy is. I've met him like once or twice, just kind of in passing, so I don't really know him a whole lot. But those are the kind of moments that the team either comes together or you can lose it, and it can go off the rails really bad. And I think the fact that he responded, he brought that team together. They coached the way that they did. I think is a huge testament to him, and I think kind of certainly solidifies. I think a lot of people thought he was a great coach, but I think it kind of solidified him as being one of the best, if not the best, college coaches in the country.
Okay. To actually circle back to your 2002 season, what was it like for 2002? What was it like being under Jim Tressel, for instance? How was that? How did he build that team's culture, essentially?
Uh, it's funny. Like Tress, I love Tress. Tress is a great guy. I can still text him to this day. It's been over 20 years, and he just a different approach than coaches I had in the past. I kind of tell the story. I played for him for 3 years, and I think I only ever heard him yell at us one time, and it didn't even have to do with football. It was how some guys were acting on a plane when we were flying out to Penn State, like his first year. And I want to say in 3 years, like, that was the only time he ever yelled or raised his voice. And he brought us together. He built relationships. He made us feel important. He knew a lot about us. I know with me individually, I mean, he'd only been on the job for a couple of weeks, and he came up, and I hadn't started yet. I was still fighting for a starting spot. And he came up and he knew what my major was. He knew who my parents were, what they did for a living. He knew about all three of my older brothers and kind of what they were doing. Um, and he just, I think, and he did that with everybody. And I think it just kind of made us feel important. He did a lot to bring us together as a team, doing, fun things, Midnight Madness with basketball. We did some softball things, just, goofy, corny things that, you see on kind of a regular basis on social media today, but I don't think was very common 20 plus years ago. We were doing that stuff. And I think that all brought us together. So when we were out there, none of us were superstars on the field individually. We weren't. I mean, we weren't loaded with first rounders. Certainly, like Miami, obviously, but we were a group that were very tight knit. We loved each other. We played for each other. We respected each other, and that all started with him. And he kind of built that culture, that relationship, and it was huge. And that's, I think, what kind of helped us in those tight moments and those tight games when sometimes teams buckle. For us, it wasn't a big deal. We just kept playing the next play.
Well, if you go back to that 2022 season, though, you guys were in so many close rock. I mean, basically they were rock fights. I mean, you guys went down to the wire with Cincinnati. I mean, let's not forget Purdue was another one. I mean, you guys had faced so much adversity. I mean, since you guys were such a close knit group, I think that's probably what helped you guys get through all that. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, 100%. And it prepared us. I mean, you talk about the championship game. We went to overtime in that game, and for us, like, that wasn't a big deal. Like, having a close game. I mean, I would have to go back and look at the scores from that year, as far as all the games. But I feel like most of our games, or at least I would say over half of them, were relatively close games. Illinois was an overtime game that year, and they, had kind of a rough record. The close games you mentioned. So when we got into that championship game and we got to overtime, I honestly don't think any of us were like, yeah, whatever. It's just another game for us. And obviously Miami hadn't really dealt with that because they pretty much blew everybody out of the water all year. And I think that was a huge advantage for us in that moment throughout that year.
Do you think that maybe created some doubt in their mind? They're like, hey, these guys aren't going away. They won't quit. They keep coming after us. Everybody else that year, I mean, they just smoked everybody. I mean, you guys just would not die. I mean,
yeah, I honestly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I tell the story. I think they knew from the get-go of that game that it was going to be a dogfight. I tell people their first offensive snap, it was a pass play. We didn't get the sack, but we did knock Dorsey on the ground, and he rarely got touched that year. I mean, very few sacks, very few hits, but at the end of the play, the thing was all four of us were there. All four D linemen were literally right there. We had all got to the backfield, and we were all within a yard or two of Dorsey. And I remember turning around to go back to the line of scrimmage, and I just saw the way all those dudes were like kind of looking at each other. And it was in my head, and obviously pumped me up, but in my head, I saw these guys looking at each other with these kind of wide-eyed looks like, oh shit, these guys can play. Like, these guys are pretty good. And I think they knew at that point, like, this wasn't going to be like their other games. Like, this was going to be a dogfight for 60 minutes. And that's how it continued. And I think we earned a lot of their respect throughout that game because of how we played on both sides of the ball.
I mean, because if you look back then, the Big Ten's, reputation was always being big and slow. And I think they took for granted that. I mean, you guys had a lot of good athletic linebackers and in secondary. I mean, you guys had a lot of good athletes on that team. And I think they probably, underestimated you guys and didn't think you guys had that much team speed,
Yeah, and in fact, oddly enough, I just saw a clip. I don't know what the podcast was. A couple of Miami guys, and their center from that year, his name was Brent Romberg. He was on as the guest for that show, and he was talking about that game, and he said going in that they were overconfident, they weren't as prepared as we were, and all these things, and it showed. Like, we were ready, we had a game plan, we believed that we could win, and I do think there was some arrogance on their part because of their past. They completely dominated the year before, and I mean, there are still people saying that 0-1 Miami team, and I would probably agree with them, is probably the best team that's ever been put together in the college game. That team was ridiculous. The talent on that team, all their games that year. So I think they became kind of overconfident. A lot of people didn't think we should be in that game, even though we were undefeated. A lot of the experts and ESPN people and stuff were, it's going to be over by halftime, it's going to be a blowout, and I think they kind of bought into all that hype. And obviously, we showed up to play, and I don't think they were ready for it.
Okay, what was Kirk Krenzel like as the quarterback of the team? What was his leadership like? How'd you guys feel about him?
We loved him. He was cool, collective. He was smart. I think he'd be the first one to tell you he wasn't a crazy skilled or talented guy, certainly like a lot of the quarterbacks we've had in, recent history. But he was super smart. He knew the offense. He knew how to read defenses. He knew how to put the offense in the right position to make the right plays. He knew where to go with the ball. He was smart with the ball. He protected it. He didn't create stupid turnovers. Things like that. And that's kind of the year you started hearing that phrase trestle ball, where, we kind of protected it on offense and we moved the ball, score a ton of points. But we really defensively, we held those teams to pretty low scores. We had the best punter in the country. We had the best field goal kicker in the country. And he did what he needed to. He was a great leader on that side. And, we always had confidence in what he could do and how he led. He never got too high. He never got too low. He was your prototypical kind of cool, collective guy on the field.
That's great. What was the 03 season like? Like, could you explain what happened there?
I think that the roles were switched. We kind of went from the ones being kind of, as Sean said earlier, we kind of went from being the hunted team to being the hunters. And I think we kind of got maybe a little complacent at times, looking at records and, this team should be a win, et cetera. We certainly worked hard. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like we didn't plan or have good game plans. But, when you are at that level and when you're that team, you're going to get everybody's best shot. Like, you're their bowl game. You're their national championship game. So you're having to deal with that constant fight week in and week out. You don't really get a week off. And back then, and, certainly no disrespect to the recent teams and stuff, but back then, like, you couldn't afford to lose a game in the regular season. There was no 14 playoff or, 12-team playoff or, whatever. Like, if you lost a regular season game, your year was done as far as the national championship goes. So really the entire season was a playoff. And, like I said, when you're a 20, 21-year-old kid, that's a lot of pressure. You're trying to do a lot. And I just think that, we got everybody's best shot. We played some good teams with some really good players. Wisconsin was, they may not have had the best record, but if you go back and look at their team, they had some studs on that team. They had a couple of first rounders off that team. They had a bunch of dudes get drafted as well. Like, they were a quality football team. And, we dropped that game. Then we played Michigan up there. And I'll be completely honest with you, I don't know what the hell happened in that game. That was one where we just, from the opening kickoff, I don't know what that was. I still can't explain what happened. I didn't even know myself. I remember we called it Field Florida. D'Antonio had called that call. I'd probably run that play Oh God, at least 100 times. At least 100 times in my career. And I remember I was lined up. I dropped to a knee before the ball snapped, and I had a complete blank as to what the hell I was supposed to do. I had no clue on a call that we've run. That was a standard call for us, and I was like, "What in the world? Like, what am I doing?" And of course, the ball snapped. I was still on my knee, and it was just kind of one of those days, unfortunately. And I don't know why. And um, unfortunately, we got beat up pretty good in that game, and our national, our opportunity to repeat had kind of gone out the window at that point.
I actually got to interview Ben Hartzog, and what a great dude he is, and he is too. I mean, we've talked about Ben, um, but he says that still haunts him. That he lost. That he goes, that was my senior year, and we dropped that game. It's the only time Trussell lost to Michigan. He
Yep.
goes, that game still irks me. 20 years
Oh
from
yeah, still
whatever years it
bugs
was.
the hell out of me, and it's been. Well, yeah, I was gonna say that was 03, so you're talking what 22 years now, something like that, 23 years, and yeah, it still bothers me, and that's why sometimes crazy, funky things happen,
Sure.
and even this year when they lost to Michigan, and everybody wants to freak out. It's like those days happen, like the other team, their scholarship. I mean, we all hate Michigan, I get it, but guess what? Those guys are pretty big good players up there too. They're on scholarship and they got recruited out of high school as well. So, and it's just, unfortunately, you have those days, and anybody who's watched a lot of football, you've seen a team come out and for whatever reason just doesn't perform that day, and there's no real explanation for it. It just happens.
There is one game I want to ask you about, because I kind of feel, people forget about this, but you guys were actually the ones in 2001. You guys actually went up to Ann Arbor, and that was the first time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us, we didn't have the internet back then, so we didn't know much about Craig Krenzel. This guy starting for the first time. You guys go up to
Yeah.
Michigan. It's been forever since we beat them, and you guys went up there and you guys beat them. What was, I mean, that kind of springboarded you guys to the next season, didn't it? Would you say that momentum kind of?
It did. Yeah. And we ended the season the right way that year, and I think it gave us a lot of confidence because that was a game we weren't expected to win. Craig, a lot of people don't know that he was a Michigan kid. He grew up like a half hour from Ann Arbor, 40 minutes, something like that, from Ann Arbor. He was kind of a hometown kid up there. And he kind of came in, and you talk about rough college starts for the first time. I mean, first start in college against your most hated rival, like that's a big game to start, and played really well. He did a great job that week, and as a whole team, we just Tress had us ready to go, the coaching staff had us ready to go. We played really well. We had that game in hand most of the time, and I think that kind of catapulted us into the bowl game. And into the offseason, because obviously when you beat them, that leaves a good feeling going into the offseason. And obviously we went through the next year and won the title, and it was a really good springboard for us to end the year, because a lot of people don't realize we were 7-5 that year. I think that was our final record that year. Tress's first year, I think we were 7-5.
And he called it, at the basketball game, that everybody be proud of you guys going up there, and in Ann Arbor, he called the win. I mean, everybody must have thought he was crazy at the time, but they had to pump you guys up. Like, hey, we got a
Oh,
coach
it did.
that gets it, man.
Yeah, and I think that was the big thing, like because that was the knock on Cooper before, that he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand the game. He was kind of a West Coast guy, because I think Cooper was originally from, I want to say, like Arizona or Nevada, somewhere out west. I'm not sure the exact state, but and he didn't kind of get it. So, Coop, to give him his respect, a lot of maybe Ohio State fans don't realize. I think his winning percentage as a head coach was like 87 or 88% or something like that. Like it was pretty high. So, the fact that he did as well as he did, he couldn't beat that team up north, and that's ultimately what cost him his job. So when Tress came in, there was a huge emphasis on that game, including that comment. One of the first things he did was put up a Michigan countdown clock throughout the facility, the weight room, locker room, training room, hallways, and stuff like that, team meeting rooms. So we were seeing that all the time. And that was huge. And it was, he got it. He got us ready. And obviously, he fared pretty well. Like I said, he only had that one loss, which was 0-3, which, as Ben said, still sucks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when that actually happened, do you guys actually like have locker room meetings, like talking about what happened, how you can get better from those experiences, those bad experiences you guys had in some of those bad games?
You do. We did have a team meeting after that Michigan game before the bowl game. Um, you talk about it, but at the same time, you also don't dwell on it. We know that we all had a bad day, and it wasn't just one guy. I mean, it was the majority of us. In a normal situation, you might have one or two guys with a bad day. You hope it's not the majority of the team, and that day just happened to be. And it was that wasn't us. That wasn't the way we played. And we knew that was kind of a fluke thing. It sucked it happened on that day and against that team. But you do address it. But pretty briefly, like you don't harp on it. It's okay. It's over. It's done. We screwed up. This is where we screwed up. Let's make the adjustments. Let's move forward and let's get ready for the next game. Whatever the situation is.
Okay, the reason I ask that is because it goes back to that meeting between the Buckeyes after the game, because this would be the fourth time they done lost.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they talked about the locker room meeting, the way they showed, like, really explained how deep it went, talking about it, even holding not only each other accountable, but even holding Ryan Day and the coach accountable. And I've went on record saying this might have been the best thing that happened to help propel this program
Mm-hmm.
to where it went to the national title game. Is that how you feel? And not only that, but would you feel like if
Oh
this
yeah.
team goes on a run, do you feel like that was the turning point that helped this program get to another level?
Yeah, and that's where, and this is in all of my years of playing. When I was at Ohio State, in those couple of years, when we were really good, I think that was the key difference between those teams. And then, like when I got to the NFL, the teams I was on there weren't very good. The thing about Ohio State, and this is what I like about their meeting, um, is I could, in a constructive way, get into somebody's face on that team and essentially call them out that they're not doing what they need to. Somebody can get into my face and say the same thing, like, "Hey, you're dropping the ball. Like this isn't you. This isn't how you play," and you don't take it as a negative. You respect them because they're calling you out, and you perform as a result of it. Versus teams that don't have great leadership, that if you do that, all of a sudden you start having fights. You start having fights in the locker room between the guys. You have guys bad mouthing the coaches, all of those types of things. And I think that, because all these teams are super talented, they all have skills across the board. I think the key difference in, teams that are the exceptional teams versus everybody else is that leadership quality. Can I get into your face, tell you you didn't do a good job because you didn't prepare or whatever the case was, without you taking it personally or realizing it? And I know that, like, I tell people in practice, me and Alex Stepanovich, he was our center that year or those couple of years. If he wasn't practicing good when we were going live or whatever, I was in his face. I mean, I was all over him. And we never fought. We never got into each other's faces in a negative way. It was always like, I'm not being negative. I'm holding you accountable. You're better than this. I'm holding you accountable. Like, this isn't acceptable. And vice versa. And he would do it to me as well. And as a team, we were able to do that. And I think that this year's team was able to do that. They were able to find that spot. I'm not attacking you because of how you played. I expect more out of you. You've shown you can do more. The expectation is there. Get it done. Like, know your role and do your part. And when you have teams that can do that in a constructive way, I think that's what kind of makes certain teams excel over others. And I think that they came, and I agree with you. I think that meeting, I obviously wasn't there, but I can imagine the team meeting I have had personally. what was said. And there was some brutal honesty in that room. I guarantee it. Guys were getting called out. But again, people were doing it because the expectation. I know you're better than this. I know you can do more than this. Then let's do it. What can I do? You know, I would tell Alex, what can I do to help you be better for Saturday? What does their nose tackle do? What is he good at? That's what I want to do to you all week long, so that you're prepared. Like those types of things. And I agree. I think that meeting, those guys came together. They made a decision that day that they were going to hold each other accountable. The expectation was they were going to win and they were going to play together. And obviously they came out against Tennessee and lit it up. I mean, it was, you know, impressive. And then they went out to Oregon and, I mean, absolutely lit them up. I mean, that was crazy how they jumped up on those guys so quick. And I think it just steamrolled from there.
Now, one question I always wondered this, and you know, it's been a bunch of Buckeye fans have always, you know, wanted to, you know, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, Tim. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you think in
Oh, no.
03, if you had Clarett, do you think that makes a big difference? You think you guys actually repeat if Clarett comes back that year?
I to be honest, no, I don't. I don't think that having him there would have caused us to repeat, to be honest. And I say that because, you know, we kind of dropped the ball defensively against Wisconsin and Michigan. And I don't know how much the running game would have helped us in those situations, to be completely honest. Could it? Very possible. I don't know. I just, you know, defensively, we had Wisconsin beat. We had them, I think it was, if I remember right, it was like 4th and 1, and we gave up a touchdown. And it was like a 40, 50-yard touchdown to Lee Evans. He beat Chris Gamble, one of the best corners in the country.
Yeah.
Maurice Clarett playing for us doesn't help that situation.
Sure.
You know, we're out there, we're the defense. We got to make that stop, and we didn't get that done. So from that perspective, no, I don't think that it would have made a huge difference, to be honest with you. I don't think we would have necessarily repeated because of it.
Okay. I just always wondered that. I mean, that's just something, you know, me and my friends have always talked about. And we've always, you know, it's just one of those what ifs. So that's an interesting take, and that's awesome that you know, you bring that up about your defense. You know, that the defense dropped the ball, wasn't the offense. I mean, that's awesome take.
Oh yeah, and it was, and I've had people ask me that question before, and I've kind of said the same thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, which scenarios and maybe a hair bit different, very possible, but so much so that all of a sudden we win those games. That's a lot. That I don't know if that would have happened like that, to be honest.
Now, I had one of our moderators in the chat, really good dude named Buck Vader. He's a loyal Buckeye fan. He wanted me to ask you a question. He goes, "What makes a good run stuffer, Tim?"
Honestly, it's being strong, and just taking our blocks. And I where my ability was, when I would get double teamed, I wouldn't get moved off the ball. I mean, I could take on 2 offensive linemen and not really give any ground. And when you do that, and obviously I had some great linebackers behind me. When those linebackers commit, those offensive linemen are in a tough spot. They either got to stay on me or come off on them. If they come off on them, then I got to make the play. So I think it's honestly probably mostly mentality, toughness, grit. I was a freakishly strong individual back in the day, and I've lost a little bit now that I'm old. But I mean, I was benching 500-600 pounds. I mean, I was squatting 700-800 pounds. I mean, it was a lot, and I was a very strong. And I spent a lot of time in the weight room because I knew that was my role and that was my job. I wasn't a flashy player. I never had great stats. I wasn't a sack guy or anything like that. My job was to eat up offensive linemen in the middle, let Matt Wilhelm and AJ Hawk run wild and do their thing. And the fact that of my 3 years starting, I had 2 first-team All-Americans behind me. I feel like I did my job pretty well.
That's that's what it takes is unselfish tackles that, like you said, keep the linebackers clean so they can scrape and make the play, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, but honestly, I would say it's probably the biggest thing was it's neck up stuff, the head stuff.
Did you have a wrestling background? Did
I
you wrestle in
did.
high school?
I did wrestle in high school, and then and I think that helped a lot. I think it helped with my leverage, my footwork, my hands, staying low, taking on those blocks, things of that nature. I think it's a huge advantage if for high school kids that especially if you're not doing anything in the wintertime, join the wrestling team. Even if you don't wrestle varsity or whatever, you're going to burn a ton of calories. You're going to get rid of a lot of fat. You're going to work on your foot speed and hips and leverage. You're going to do a lot of things that you're never going to be able to mimic in a weight room in the off season. And oddly enough, I ended up coaching wrestling where I work. I've been coaching wrestling 14 years now, something like that. 13
Nice.
years, I think, something like that.
Okay, I would ask, given the fact that you talked about how from when you guys won the national title in 2002 and you kind of let it carry over into in 2003, what would be your advice for this team coming into 2025 as far as how to defend themselves going now that they're going from being the hunters to the hunted?
You prepare. Mentally prepare. Make yourselves ready to go. Don't assume you can beat anybody. You got to go at it with the same mentality that you did in the playoffs. That you got to tell yourselves that nobody expects you to win. And honestly, I don't know where they'll be. I don't pay attention to the way too early rankings and all that stuff. That I'm sure that stuff's already been put out and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, they lost a lot of key players. You're going to have a new quarterback. You're going to have several new offensive linemen. You're going to have some new defensive linemen. So they're going to have a lot of new starters in the lineup coming up. And so you just got to go into it with the same mentality that you had. Don't listen to the outside world. Hold each other accountable. Do that stuff from the get-go. There's an expectation when you put on that gray helmet down there. And you just got to hold each other accountable and have great leadership. And if that continues, if Jack Sawyer and Will Howard and all those guys establish that leadership this year, those guys that are coming back have to continue that moving forward.
Okay, you talked about how you had a wrestling background. I've actually always wondered this. What got you into sports, and more particularly, what got you into football?
Well, I was the youngest of 4 boys. All my older brothers played football, and to be honest with you, I spent most of my childhood getting the living shit kicked out of me by 3 older brothers. And they all played, so I kind of just grew up with the expectation that that's what I should do. And I, worked really hard at it and, sports in general. And because of that work ethic, I found some success early on. And, certainly in high school, obviously I had dreams of playing in the NFL, but, coming from I love my hometown, don't get me wrong. But you don't have star athletes coming out of Clyde, Ohio. It's a small town. You got a handful of lights in that town. So my thought was if it could just get me to college, like that would be huge. So it just I grew up with the expectation. My oldest brother's 10 years older than me. He graduated high school in 1988. And so, literally from the time I was 4 or 5 years old, I was going to high school football games, watching him. And he went to Baldwin Wallace, and he was 2-time All-American there. So from the time I was 8 to 11 or 12, I was watching him in college completely dominate, and it just kind of filtered down to me. And when I figured out I was, pretty decent at it, I just kind of kept that drive going.
I got a question for you. That's interesting that your brother went to Baldwin and Wallace. Did he know Tressel's dad? Did he play for Dick Tressel, or was Tressel's dad already gone by then?
No, I don't think Tressel's dad was there yet.
Okay.
He played for, I can't remember the guy's name. He was a legendary coach there, and he'd coached there for a long time. That's why I don't think, I want to say Tressel's dad was the next coach after the guy that was there when my brother played. And
Okay.
that would have been, oh gosh, you know what? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think my brother played for Tressel, for Tressel's dad, though. I don't remember any connection like that. I know that Tressel knew who my brother was because obviously of the ties he had to Baldwin Wallace.
Sure.
And like I said, my brother was, I mean, he was a 2 or 3 time All-American there. So, I mean, he was a pretty big name on that campus. But I don't remember ever having any conversations that my brother played for his father.
Okay.
I'd have to look up when coaches were there, though. And don't forget, I was like 9 or 10. So,
Yeah. I just thought that's an interesting fact.
yeah.
I didn't know your brother played there, so I just thought that was pretty, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. The other question I would have for you is actually based off like today's college football, because I know back in the day, a lot of the stuff that players can now do was illegal back then. How would you advise players to handle NIL and the transfer portal, and what are your thoughts on that and how it's changed college football?
I honestly don't like it. I'm going to be honest. I'm all for the NIL. I agree that players should get paid their worth. Back before NIL, I didn't like the fact that you could go down to Columbus and you would see people wearing jerseys with certain numbers, and you knew whose numbers they were, but you didn't have a nameplate on the back because the player couldn't get played or paid for it. So I'm okay with guys making money. I don't, but I think where they screwed up was they didn't phrase things the proper way. I guess I'll say it that way. The fact that you're essentially offering these guys this money out of high school, it's not you're getting paid because they're selling your jersey or whatever. It's almost like it's become free agency every year in college football. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that, you're getting that, and combined with the fact that with the transfer portal now, believe it or not, I'm actually okay with having a transfer portal. But again, I think there needs to be limitations. I don't like the fact that guys can, play at a school for a year and then, I think I can go make more money here, so I'm going to transfer and go to this place. I think guys should be able to transfer, but I almost feel like they should have done the transfer portal and like, okay, you get one free transfer. Because I do get, hey, I commit to this school. I'm going to play for this school. I go to school there for a year, and the coach leaves and goes somewhere else or gets fired or whatever, and the new coaching staff comes in. So I get like, all right, you're going to transfer. Kids that, might go to a school that's pretty far away from home. Like, we had guys on our team from like Florida, California. Yeah, it's glitz and glamour when you're in high school getting recruited. So I get like you go there and it's like all of a sudden you don't ever see your family. You don't ever see your friends. Like, and it's tough. You got to have that, I guess, homesickness aspect. So like you want to transfer to a school that's closer to home. I'm okay with that. But I hate that I'm seeing guys that will play for 3, 4, 5 different programs in their college careers. I think that's excessive. I don't, I also think that you're completely foolish if you don't think that these players, some have feelers out like, oh, if I entered the transfer portal, who would want me and how much would I get? That are kind of out there, almost like an agent testing the waters to see what's out there before they make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like the wild, wild west. They kind of threw this stuff out there without thinking about like, how can we control this? How can we regulate this? Guys should get paid for what they're doing, but how do we control that? And the other thing that I'm concerned with, and I've brought this up in the wrestling world there are some names in the wrestling world, high school wrestling world, that are getting huge, like millions of dollars because they're going to school. And these are like literally high school wrestlers that are already competing at the international level, like that'll be competing for Olympics and world teams and stuff like that. And, you know, they're getting these deals. And my question is, who's negotiating these deals? Like, you know, when I was in college, like they put us through, when you were getting near that point where you could get drafted, they basically took you aside and said, okay, we're going to give you some financial education here. We're going to teach you how to, you know, questions to ask agents, background checks, you know, doing all of these things to make sure that they're kind of setting you up to have success in that area. Who's doing it for these guys? Like if they're coming in as freshmen and they're already in this situation, like who's helping these guys in high school? You know, to make sure that they don't get steered by the wrong person, or steered into a bad NIL deal where somebody's getting paid way more than they should and the player's not getting as much. And, you know, from that aspect of it. And I've asked around like how this stuff works, and I've never really gotten a clear answer on it. So that part kind of scares me a little bit too, that, you know, these guys don't really know what they're kind of getting into. They're being told what they want to hear, but sometimes you need to have someone that's going to be blatant and honest with you about what you're getting, what your value is, getting you good deals, not necessarily the most money, but quality deals, and kind of helping people through that process. Because, you know, like I said, some of these high school kids, who do you turn to for that? You don't know agents. You know, these people are tracking you down through social media and stuff. You don't know them. I mean, do you have the money? Are you going to somebody to run background checks on these people to see, do they have, you know, shady past where they, you know, have financial difficulties or been accused of financial fraud and, you know, these types of things. So that part kind of does actually kind of worry me with the whole NIL aspect of it as well.
Well, if you look, some of these kids, it's almost like their parents are auctioning them off like a piece of cat, like cattle. I mean, some of these parents are like, "Hey, we're keeping the deadline at 12 midnight tonight, and whoever has the best deal for us, that's where we're going." I mean, highest bidder wins. It's just like some of these kids, I think, are being used by their their parents, and I mean, that's got to be tough for a 17-year-old kid to be the breadwinner of the family. You know, he can help the family get out, and it's like they're almost being used. It's just not a good.
And even if they do have, good parents but again, if, putting myself in this situation, my parents were great. My dad was a paramedic and my mom was a nurse. They don't know anything about this kind of stuff. So if these people would have been coming to me when I was in high school, my dad would have had no clue on any of this stuff. Neither would my mom. So, what are they being told? And I remember going through the agent process and meeting guys and agents and possible people to represent me. And it was kind of like, and by then, because I had gone through these trainings, I knew what kind of questions to ask. And then based on their answers, kind of made decisions. But if I wouldn't have had that training, could I have gotten suckered into a bad deal with a bad representative and kind of gotten screwed in the long haul? I don't know. And I don't know what kind of education is out there for these guys. And, that kind of concerns me with them long-term wise, because for some of these guys, we just had the NFL draft and everybody watches it and everybody knows about it, but understand there's a hell of a lot of guys that play college football that are not going to ever go to the NFL. So maximizing their income in college is really important to help set them up for the rest of their lives. Making sure that you're in the right position with the right people that are doing what should be done is super important. I probably wouldn't get any of these guys as an agent because I would say, listen, whatever we get, I'm only going to let you have 20% of it. The rest of it, I'm going to make you put into an account and you're not allowed to touch it. And we're just going to let it sit there and grow. And so that way you are protected and have money 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, not just right now, because you don't know when that next check is going to come, if it's even going to come. Hell, I went from being a starter in the NFL to 16 months later not having a job. I didn't think the checks were going to stop that quick. And some of these college guys, that's going to happen. They're getting these 6-figure deals in college, or even $1 million deals in college. You may never play it down in the NFL. That might be the only money you get. So you better be smart with it so you're set up and you're not blowing it and wasting it. So trying to get them that education is important.
Nice.
Okay, that's really good. That's a really good point, and I really do believe most parents, as well as these kids, should take that advice.
Yeah.
Tyler in our chat room actually has a question for you when he's asking, what is the strength of this year's team compared to last year's?
You mean the upcoming team coming
Yeah,
in?
yeah.
I would say the receivers. I mean, position wise, because I mean, offensively, it's going to be rough because you're going to have new running backs, you're going to have a new quarterback, you're going to have. I mean, what we lose three.
Two
Don't
linemen.
quote me on this. What was it? Two
Three,
or three offensive linemen?
three
I
actually,
thought.
because we lost Fryer, Simmons, and Donnie.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
McLaughlin too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, McLaughlin. Yeah, so that's
Which,
four.
But
so
Carson played a
yeah,
lot,
so
though. So
yeah,
gotcha.
so I mean, we're gonna have two or three guys that are gonna be playing in those spots that are new. A new running back, new quarterback. You got Smith on the outside. I think obviously he's, I mean,
Yeah.
he's obviously the best player, one of the best players in the country. Um, Defensively, you lost some dudes off that D line that was pretty awesome. Um, you got obviously Downs coming back, so that's a huge strength. I mean, obviously it's safety position, but there's not a lot. I mean, so these guys are going to have to prove themselves. And don't forget, we also had some coaching changes too, so that's going to be a factor going into how are these. How's Patricia going to coach? Like he hasn't coached for a few years, or I think he hasn't coached for a couple of years. So that's going to be kind of a tough spot too. All right, buddy, say I love you. So yeah, I would say they're going to need to rely on Smith and Downs. Are going to be the big ones. But for Buckeye fans, there's going to be a lot of new faces out there.
Hey Tim, if you got to go, we understand. I know you only want to. You.
Oh
Go.
no, I'm good.
Oh, you're good. Okay, cool. Just don't want to keep you away from your kids or anything. So we appreciate you.
Nope,
Awesome.
we're good.
I got one question I want to ask you. I know that you've been coaching, like you said, you've been coaching wrestling in high school. What is your opinion? Because I know, like when we went to high school, a lot of us were encouraged to do multiple sports. Now it seems like these kids are being kind of, I wouldn't say forced, but kind of pushed in ways of just doing one sport. You know, what do you think about that?
Worst thing you can do is focus on one sport. Worst thing you can do, I think. I have been a proponent of multi-sport athletes my entire career. I've told my wrestlers, I encourage them to do other sports, play football. I've had, and this is one thing that cracks me up too. Like I've had football players, so I teach at a high school, and I've had kids that wrestled, say, as freshmen, and then they decide they're not going to wrestle anymore so they can focus on football. And I'm like, nope, that's a terrible idea because you're not going to get the work in the wintertime that you would in the wrestling room. Like I kind of mentioned earlier with the hands and feet and all that kind of stuff. And oh no, like this guy says that I should do this. And I said, okay, well, I played in the NFL, but that's cool. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Like, but I mean, and unless you are, unless you are that absolute elite, I would say top 10, 15 player in the country at whatever, football, basketball, whatever it is, then okay, I understand you're gonna specialize in a sport. But I can tell you from my perspective, if I wouldn't have wrestled, and you kind of mentioned earlier, I do sell myself short, but I was a pretty dominant high school heavyweight wrestler. And the reason I got recruited by Ohio State was because my junior year in high school, I went to the state tournament. Luke Fickle, who was a GA at Ohio State, was at the tournament because his what was it? He was granted a family exemption because I think his nephew or something was wrestling at the tournament, and they were in his. It was nephew or cousin, somebody, a family member was wrestling, and they wrestled for DeSales, which was also a Division II team. So he went to the state tournament that year, and I think I pinned my way through the tournament. Like, I literally beat the piss out of everybody I wrestled, and I literally went from that to at that point I was getting recruited by like the smaller tiered Big Ten schools, Purdue, Indiana, though Illinois, those types of schools. And literally, as soon as that weekend ended, that week, that's when Ohio State came calling. That's when Michigan came calling. That's when Penn State came calling. Like, it elevated my stock big time when I won that state title. And I truly do believe that's a connection, because they saw, okay, he's a good football player. Now he's a good wrestler. That means he's an athlete. This guy can move. He can do things. He's not a single sport athlete that just can play football. And I think that elevated me above other guys that were at my level football wise. And I've talked to plenty of coaches over the years since. I mean, I still know like Vrabel, I still know Fickle. Obviously I still talk to Tress. I mean, I talked to a number of coaches that have all said the same thing, that if they're recruiting guys and they're just football players, if they're relatively close to another player and that other player does multiple sports, they're going to go with the multiple sport athlete over the single sport athlete. So I think the worst thing a parent can do is focus on one sport. Not to mention, and I see this in the wrestling world, you are going to run the risk of burning your kid out. You know, like if you're doing the same sport all year round, there is a chance that as you age, when you get into high school, like you're going to start to lose your passion for that game, you know, because you do it all the time and nonstop. So I think that's also another major danger in this. And there's so many of these like AAU leagues and these, you know, things that go literally all year round. And I don't think it's a good idea. I think your body needs a break. I think you need to change up your training. It's no different if you went to a strength coach and said, oh, I'm going to do the same lift every week for the next 52 weeks. They would tell you you're stupid, because you got to change things up. You got to switch your body up. That's what being a multiple sport athlete does. I think it's a terrible idea to focus on one sport.
Hey, we have a
super chat right here. Tim, thank you. I mean, not Tim. Bobby Mack, thank you for the 2. He says, Tim, who is the best person you wrestled?
That's a good question. Probably a guy by the last name of Hawk. What the heck was his first name? His last name was Hawk. He probably gave me my biggest fits. He was another big dude. He was super strong. I think he ended up placing maybe third. He was a year older than me. So my junior year when I won it, I think he placed maybe third. I can't remember what the heck that guy's last name was or first name was, but his last name was Hawk. I do remember that. And I don't remember what school he went to, but I would probably say but I do remember my match with him. There were some other guys that I had tough matches with. Sean, like Oak Harbor. There was a guy up there, a guy named Miles Fabian, who I wrestled multiple years in our conference we wrestled, gosh, I want to say I wrestled that guy like 8 or 10 times or something like that. He was pretty good. The heavyweight after him, what the heck was his name? Turbin, I think his name. Nick Turbin, I think was his name. He was
Nick Turbin. He was a pretty big football player too.
Yeah, he was a pretty good wrestler as well. And then there were some other guys like Stepanovich wrestled. I just never wrestled him. He was a different division. We were never at the same tournament. But as far as guys I wrestled, yeah, those would be some of the better ones that I faced.
Did you ever wrestle Pat Kenya, who was at Oak Harbor?
No, he was a 215.
Oh, okay.
He wrestled 215, so I'm glad I did, because I had to play football. I did play football against him a couple of times, and I tell you what, there's a guy that wasn't big, which is why he didn't get recruited to go to like a bigger school. Because I don't even know if he went to college. If he did, he went to Division III. But if that dude would have been 4 or 5 inches taller, I think he would have been a D1 football player. I mean, he was tough. I mean, he was strong. He was quick. He was fast. He was probably high school wise. He was probably one of the best, if not the best, high school football player I played against or I had to deal with. He gave me all kinds of fits. That dude was a tough dude.
I mean, if you look back then, though, I mean, some of these people don't know, but that SBC division, division that you guys played, I mean, Oak Harbor, Margaretta, I mean, Perkins was good. I believe Huron,
Huron had some studs too. I mean, they had a tight end that went to Michigan.
Jim
I don't remember his
Fisher.
name.
Fisher.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, they had Huron had some tough dudes on their team too.
Did you play
Yeah,
against?
there were a lot of guys.
Did you play against Brandon Schnicker? I know you guys weren't you guys teammates?
So he was, I think, he was maybe a freshman
Okay.
or sophomore when I was a senior in high school. So I don't think he actually really played
Okay.
when we played them. I don't think he was on. We were on the field, but I don't think he actually really played that young. And
Gotcha.
but he was obviously a good player. I mean, he went to Ohio State and had a good career.
Yeah,
But yeah, there was the SBC. They put out some players, man. It was a good. And then Bellevue was another team up there that they always had some really good players. Yeah, the talent pool in that part of Ohio, despite being a bunch of small towns, there were some pretty talented guys there. Bunch of cornbread farm boys.
Yeah, tough guys, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I would actually want to also ask this. Given your NFL experience, basically how many years did you play? 4?
4.
Okay, given your experience, what would be your advice to the current, like not only just the current players, but also the current Buckeyes? Like, what would you advise them to do in the NFL?
I think keep your work ethic. I think I hit kind of a low point, to be completely honest. So I went to the NFL, got drafted by Buffalo. I learned a lot my rookie year. I didn't play a ton. The 2 starters they had, one was Sam Adams and the other was Pat Williams. A lot of people aren't going to know those names, but those dudes were studs. I mean, they were going to the Pro Bowl. I'll be honest, I'm kind of shocked neither one has made the Hall of Fame yet. I mean, both, or at least in those conversations. So I didn't play a whole lot my rookie year, but I watched them and I learned a ton. Started my second year, had a pretty good year, and then unfortunately kind of got away from the basic fundamental things that made me successful. My film watching, my weight room stuff. I still worked hard, but I wasn't putting in the effort that I had been that got me to that position. Part of that was the way you practiced in the league. It was kind of more walkthrough type things where I was better because I practiced. When I was in college, we'd go, Trust would have us going ones-on-ones, like during the week. So, I would say keep that. Remember what got you where you are and continue that regardless of what's happening around you. Keep that work ethic, keep that focus, keep that attitude. Don't let outside voices into your head. You got to where you're at, whether it's in the NFL or starter in college or whatever. You got to that point doing the things you've done. Don't change those things. Keep doing those things regardless of what happens around you.
Nice. Well, I want to ask you one more. I'll go give you one more question and have TG give you one more question since we've been over this for a little bit over an hour. So, who's the best player you ever played with, and who's the best player you ever played against?
I would say the best player I ever played against was a guy named Nick Hardwick. Okay. He was a guy that not a lot of people are going to know who he was. He was a center for Purdue. And I don't remember where he got drafted. I want to say he was kind of a mid-round, maybe second, third, fourth round, late second round, third round pick for the Chargers. And he went to the Pro Bowl a number of times. And as far as college guys go, he was probably the best one I played against in college. Probably the best player I played with, and I say this because of their all around who they were, their work ethic, the type of person they were, how they carried themselves, and all of that, is a guy named Kyle Williams. And it's odd that I say that because he was the one that took my job in Buffalo. He was an LSU guy. He was a 5th round draft pick, but the dude was a stud. I think he played Oh gosh, he probably ended up playing like 12 years, all of them up in Buffalo. Went to a number of Pro Bowls. I think he went to maybe half a dozen Pro Bowls, something like that, 5, 6, something like that. Um, but he was a phenomenal individual. When I in the couple of years I was around him, like he got a big contract because he was really good, and he was one of these guys that was making millions of dollars and you wouldn't have known it. I mean, he wore jeans and a t-shirt. He didn't buy a new car. Like he was just and he was just so talented. He was always so humble, just a quality all around individual and a hell of a football player. Um, so I would probably say he was probably the best player I ever played with overall. Obviously, there were a lot. I mean, AJ, I would put him, AJ Hawk in that category as well. Um, so there were tons of dudes. Chris Gamble, Michael Jenkins from college. There were a lot of dudes. Oh gosh, Shaquille Spikes in Buffalo was a great player. I mean, there was London Fletcher was another one. So there were a lot of good players. But yeah, I would probably say Kyle would take it as somebody I played with. Um, and Nick Hardwick, and I will say both because I had to play against him in the NFL as well. But Jeff Saturday was a son of a bitch to have to play against. I didn't like playing against him. Matt Light was another offensive lineman for New England that was really, really good. Kevin Muai, who is a Hall of Famer, he was a phenomenal player. So yeah, there were a lot of good, really good dudes.
Okay. Okay, excluding the national title games, what is your favorite game that you've ever played in your career? And what is your favorite Ohio State game that you've watched since you left football?
Uh, Probably the national championship game this year, certainly, would
Outside
be
of
the
the
one I
national
watched.
title
And
games. Outside of the national
oh,
title games.
I, I would say Oregon this year. The way they
Oh.
laid it, and that's not a championship game; that was a playoff game. Um,
Mhm.
so I would say the Oregon game, the way they came out and just lit them up after the close game they had in the regular season, that was impressive, and I thoroughly enjoyed every second of that one. And the favorite game I probably played in, and I say this just because of one play, was probably the first year Tress was there, my sophomore year, when we played at Michigan, because I had an interception in that game. And
Oh,
nose tackles don't get interceptions very often. So it was the only one I ever had. So I'm going to say that game was my favorite one.
that's
Besides,
awesome.
obviously, our championship game.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Tim, thanks for coming on. We look forward to having you on more. I know
Yeah, I would love
you're
to.
going to be part of our team here, and whatever capacity that you're able to come on, we're more than happy to have you anytime you want to come on, bro. So
Yep.
thanks for doing
I
that.
plan on being around a lot. So
Awesome.
Awesome. That's great. We
as
hope
long
to
as
see
you
you
guys will keep
soon.
me around.
Oh, heck yeah. No
Oh,
doubt.
heck yes.
I want to thank Eric and everybody in the chat for coming in and checking out our debut episode. And I mean, what a great time it's been. So, guys, we'll see you next Tuesday. Until then, what do we say at TG?
OH.
IO.
IO.
Go Bucks. See y'all,
All
everyone.
right. We'll see.